Hello, welcome to next week in our for our final week of actual classwork, and then we have our final exam. So everything is running up towards the end. This week we're talking about the avant garde, and experimentalism in art and culture, thinking about why people do things that are outside the boundaries of our expectations in art and culture, and why that's a meaningful humanities kind of experience. So you've got this painting right here on the front screen of Vertumnus by Giuseppe Arcimboldo from 1590. And frankly, I don't know a whole lot about the art history of this painting. I do know that Arcimboldo, if I'm saying that even anywhere close to correctly, had a number of these paintings where he made figures out of fruit in a painting. It's a very odd maneuver, and which makes it, the avant-garde wasn't necessarily a thing in the 1590s. It wasn't something that we thought about, although I am certain from the beginning of time we've had artists who have stepped outside the boundaries of our expectations to present art, and this is a very weird painting with a dude, a Roman emperor actually, made out of vegetables and flowers. Here are two of the most famous pieces of art from the 20th century. And when you look at them, you may say, why? Why are they famous? How is this art? The first, Fountain by Marcel Duchamp from 1917, is a urinal that was placed on its side and signed R. Mutt, 1917, by Duchamp. The urinal was submitted to an art juried show. So they were going to be doing a show of artists who had submitted their work. And according to the rules of the show, the artwork had to be accepted because it was based on artist's fee. And Duchamp said, "This is a piece of art because when an artist finds beauty in the world and produces it, it must be art." This comes from the Dadaist, the avant-garde of art, where Duchamp and artists like him were trying to step outside of what we expected art, challenged people to accept different kinds of art, and this is one of the most famous examples of that. You put it in a gallery and you force people to look at it and ask, why is this meaningful? The second one is from the 1960s by Andy Warhol, who was known as a pop artist, and he did pop figures in his art. This is Campbell's soup cans, and he just painted a series of soup cans over and over as art, which calls into all kinds of questions about commercialism and manufacturing and what it means to do art. We look at these these images and some of the images and the works that we looked at this week, and we have to ask, what does it mean if somebody's producing something that is so far outside of our expectations? How do we think about it? Well, I'm going to present an idea that we might think about. And you may have seen this slide before, or this image before. This is what is known as a political compass. And what happens with a political compass, and sometimes it comes along with a quiz online, where you can identify where you fall on the political spectrum. The compass is set up with 4 different directions. Authoritarian, which means that you prefer kind of an imposed order, a strong leadership. It is a strict kind of leadership that leads to normative ideas about what culture should be. Or you are libertarian on the south end. You believe in personal freedom and individual responsibility, and you believe in ethical diversity. That means people can decide what is right or wrong on a whole spectrum of ideas, rather than having just a strict right wrong black white binary. We then go to the other sides, the west and the east side, and you have the right, the conservation of tradition. the strict morality, a limited government, and economic focus as being what is meaningful. And this does get into the political parties that we have in the U.S. The Republicans and the Democrats. So people on the right wing tend to want to conserve tradition. They want to conserve what is there. They believe in that there's this set kind of rule of law, of morality, and they want to have a very limited government because that limited government has an easier time conserving this tradition. And then there's an economic focus. They want to make sure that this conserved tradition is supported with the money that society has. We then have the left wing, the more liberal side, which is a sense of organic community. Whatever grows, grows. A sense of cultural diversity, that there is no set sense of what is right, what is the most normal kind of culture, but that it's diverse. You believe in a governance that is service oriented, that serves all people in all ways. And instead of focusing on economics and preserving wealth, we focus on rights and what people have a right to be or right to do. This is the political compass, and I'm presenting this not because we need to teach political science right now, but because this kind of model of thinking with these four directions of thinking and then where you place on that compass is a way of thinking about art as well, or culture, and thinking about what we're looking at when we're looking at a given piece of art. So let me just give you an example of how this compass is used. If you look at when I do a test like this, I generally end up way down at the bottom, libertarian, and way over on the left wing libertarian. I believe in personal freedom and individual responsibility and ethical diversity. And I believe in organic community and cultural diversity and a government that serves people and a government that believes in rights. You can think about our different political figures and where they would fall on this chart, and you can think about yourself and where you would fall on this chart. Let's move to thinking about the art, though, our culture. Sorry, I gave you a sneak preview. So on this slide, we're reproducing that political compass, and we're thinking more in terms of a humanities compass. Where does our art fall? And so at the top, we're going to think about normative art. That is, art that falls into our normal expectations. And at the bottom, we're going to think about experimentalist art, art that steps out of our expectations, does different things, does it in ways we've never seen before. And then we'll think on the conservative side, art that has conservative themes and conservative ideas, so that it's reproducing nothing that steps out of the norm as far as narrative or messages. And then liberal would be art that goes everywhere, that considers anything, and that gets a little bit weird at times with its approach, and also has some liberal politics. So if we look at the 5 texts we had this week, the easiest one to locate on this chart would be the significance of the avant garde. Even though it's talking about the avant garde, it's a basic educational article. So it's not trying to, or our basic educational video, it is not trying to do anything out of the ordinary. It's not trying to shock us or confuse us. It's just talking about a shocking and confusing thing at times, but it's really just presenting information, and it's trying to solidify that information in our minds. When we watch that, we're not shocked at all. Diner Lobster, an SNL video, is a fairly middle ground piece of art. We come to expect from Saturday Night Live that all different kinds of weird things are going to happen, and it's going to make us laugh. And that it's funny because it does seem a little experimental and a little liberal at times, but it's really not so far out of what our expectations are for a skit on a sketch comedy show. Rock Lobster is a fairly liberal approach to rock music, a fairly liberal approach to pop music. And it's got some images and some lyrics and some songs and some movement of the sounds that are a little bit experimentalist. It's not way out there. I mean, they're still using electric guitars and drums, and they're still singing words that we understand, but it's a little bit out there. We look at Consider the Lobster, David Foster Wallace's essay. Now that's getting a little bit odd. You read that and you say, what's going on with these footnotes, and why is he talking about the history of the lobster? Why is he making us look at the science of a lobster? It gets a little bit weird, and it's also very liberal in what it's asking us to think about, how it's thinking about humans and human experience, and it's a bit experimental in the way that he designs this article. One way to think about this, of course, is he was writing this for a pretty famous, pretty standard culinary arts magazine. Something people would read to learn about food and why they want to cook it that way. And he turned in this very weird article that they ended up publishing. Then, of course, we have Lobster Telephone. Now, Lobster Telephone is not really either conservative or liberal. In fact, the image of the Lobster Telephone is so out there that we don't really know whether or not it's supposed to be challenging us in conservative or liberal ways. We recognize both of those two things that he brought together, but it's certainly experimentalist. It is certainly not doing what we would expect art to do. You think about where you fall on this chart. What kind of art do you appreciate? What kind of culture do you appreciate? For me, I'm very similar with my political. I like to be things that are a little bit more experimentalist and far more liberal. So while I don't think I'm as experimentalist as I am libertarian. My falling on this chart would probably be around where Consider the Lobster is. I like that kind of art. If you look at my wife who is very politically liberal, would probably be much more up there in the right-hand corner of this chart because she likes art, she likes stories, she likes books and podcasts that are all fairly normative and that are all fairly conservative in what she can expect from it. Politics of it, she wants it more on the left wing. Where do you fall? What appeals to you, and why does it appeal to you in that way? Think about all the different experiences you've had in this course. What works of art, what works of culture that we've had have you appreciated? Where would they fall on this chart? Having a chart like this is useful for thinking about how we respond to art. And let's just look at a piece of the David Foster Wallace Consider the Lobster essay. This is from one of the footnotes. And I'm going to read this out loud, and we're going to think about why this is meaningful as a piece of art and why it is also kind of liberal and kind of experimentalist. So remember, he's telling a story of going to a Maine lobster festival, and then in the middle of it, there comes a footnote, number 6. As I see it, it's probably really good for the soul to be a tourist, even if it's only once in a while. Not good for the soul in a refreshing or enlivening way, though, but rather in a grim, steely-eyed, let's look honestly at the facts and find some way to deal with them way. My personal experience has not been that traveling around the country is broadening or relaxing, or in that radical changes in place and context have a salutary effect, but rather that the international tourism is radically constricting and humbling in the hardest way, hostile to my fantasy of being a real individual, of somehow living outside and above it all. So notice what he's saying here. He's taken this idea of travel that we have in our culture, that travel is this enlightening thing. You can find relaxation, and you can find beauty, and you can find things you normally find. And he's saying it's not that at all. For him, travel, being a tourist, is like this constricting sense of himself that he has to fit himself into America in ways that he would normally not want to do. He wants to see himself as being outside, but by traveling, he gets enlightened that he's not outside. He is a part of everybody else. Coming up is the part that my companions find especially unhappy and repellent, a sure way to spoil the fun of vacation travel. It's a weird parentheses there. To be a mass tourist for me is to become a pure late-date American, alien, ignorant, greedy for something you can never have, disappointed in a way you can never admit. It is to spoil by sheer ontology the very unspoiledness you are there to experience. That's a weird line. It's to spoil the very unspoiledness you are there to experience. So just by going and being a tourist, You are no longer looking at this pure act of culture. You have messed it up by being there. It is to impose on yourself on places that in all non-economic ways would be better and realer without you. It is in lines and gridlock and transaction after transaction to confront a dimension of yourself that is inescapable as it is painful. As a tourist, you become economically significant but existentially loathsome, an insect on a dead thing. This is so bleak, so and funny, but also so weird because it's just coming in an article about the Lobster Main Festival, and he's getting all bleak about what it means to actually be a tourist. We read this experimental piece of writing and we have to ask ourselves, where is he coming from? What is he trying to build here? Does he just want to depress us all? Or is he trying to capture something about the human experience that we don't ordinarily capture? The avant garde allows us to experience another's mind in very weird and unique ways. Now, regular art does it too, but so often in regular art, we just read something or watch something or listen to something and we can just enjoy it. It is pleasing. It doesn't make us ask questions. Narrative art tells us stories and grabs us our attention and amuses us for a little while. Avant-garde art often challenges us in ways that make us say, what the hell was that? Why is that interesting? Some people get mad at avant-garde art. Why would we want to read that? One of the things that we can say about it, though, is at the very, very least, when you look at a piece of avant-garde, you have to ask, what type of human created that? And at the very core of that question is, how am I like that human? So we look at something like Lobster Telephone, and we say, what does this mean? That is kind of the beauty of avant-garde art. We have to understand, where was Salvador Dali coming from? What part of the political spectrum? What part of the artistic spectrum? What is he trying to do here? We have to try to understand the story of this sculpture, and then we have to try to understand, is it meaningful, or how is it meaningful? Now, Dali had all kinds of things. We read a little bit about it, right? All kinds of things he was trying to accomplish in his art, from dreams and mysteries and where his mind went. But as a member of the audience looking at this, what we have to ask ourselves is Dali human in the same way we are human? Is Dali experiencing the world in the same way that we experience the world? Or what if you're standing next to somebody, your spouse, and she looks at this and she says, that is just weird, I don't want to look at that. And you look at it and you say, that's really intriguing. I want to understand what's going on here, or vice versa. We have to understand what it means for a fellow audience member to accept or not accept a piece of art. Understanding the humanities means being open to all forms of creation, all forms of expressions, and all forms of humans. Now, that does not mean we have to accept all forms. You can look at racist or sexist or homophobic art and reject it because of the very politics it's coming from. Or you can look at art that seems to go against your own moral code, something that you don't believe in, and reject it because of those reasons. Or you can look at art that is just not doing it for you. You just can't wrap your head around it. It doesn't seem pretty. And you can say, I don't like that. But still, what understanding the humanities means is that you have to be able to see the art and ask yourself, how is this created by another human? I'm going to wrap up this part of the lecture just by reading this children's book that I used to read to my children all the time. We love this book. I love this book. It's a board book for very young children called Whoever You Are by Mem Fox. And I'm presenting this because the art in it is kind of freaky and weird, but also just because it's a good way to think about what art makes us do. It makes us ask, whoever you are, what is your value? Little one, whoever you are, wherever you are, there are little ones just like you all over the world. Their skin may be different from yours, and their homes may be different from yours. Their schools may be different from yours, and their lands may be different from yours. Their lives may be different from yours, and their words may be very different from yours. But inside, their hearts are just like yours, whoever they are, wherever they are, all over the world. Their smiles are like yours, and they laugh just like you. Their hurts are like yours, and they cry like you too, whoever they are, wherever they are, all over the world. Little one, when you are older and when you are grown, you may be different, and they may be different wherever you are, wherever they are in this big, wide world. But remember this: joys are the same, and love is the same, pain is the same, and blood is the same, smiles are the same, and hearts are just the same, wherever they are, wherever you are, wherever we are, all over the world. My belief about lobster telephone, or consider the lobster, or lobster diner, my belief about the various forms of art that we experience and the various ways and the weirdness and the avant-garde and the experimentalism of the art, or the liberalism or the conservatism of the art, my belief is that art ultimately allows us to experience humans and to recognize that the very flesh and blood that created lobster telephone is very similar to the flesh and blood that I hold on my lap when I read a story. Humans are humans, and we have a great capacity for creative difference. But by experiencing something that puts us way outside of our comfort zone, we may understand that our understanding of the human mind is far more limited than we might have thought, and it forces us to go back and accept others in a broader way. So, our semester is almost done. Our meal is almost done. What do you need to do to finish? Well, first, wrap up project number 2. Our workshop for that is next week. Fill in the missing journals if you have them. And I will tell you that participation in this class has dropped way off. I'm not sure why, but there are many people who may be listening to my voice right now that need to go back and fill in some gaps. Contact me if you can't. If the module is closed, I'll probably ask you, well, what's been going on? Why didn't you get it in? But at least we can have that conversation. Revise project 1 if you've discussed revision with Mike, and a couple of those projects are still coming back. Start reviewing weeks and journals for final exam. That means go look at the weeks in the module and look at your journals and start reviewing them. A study guide for that exam will be posted next week. Fill out the Smart Eval's feedback form for the class. You've probably received a lot of emails about it. Please fill that out. And then if you have concerns or problems or confusions, contact me. Let's talk. I've got time to meet with you. I'm happy to talk with you. I hope you're doing well. I hope you enjoyed the experimentalism of this week, and we will see you next week.